So I will quickly move us on to using social media, which is our next session. And I have to admit that this session has had to completely change very last minute, because I was going to talk a little bit more about the new branding that we've already mentioned, and how kind of having that cohesive messaging and branding, especially on social media, is really important for growth and getting our message across. Now, unfortunately, it's not available for me to show you at the moment, so that is having to be changed last minute. But I thought instead I would just talk a bit more about how, regardless of branding, regardless of what that key messaging is, we can still use social media effectively. And there are two real avenues of using social media. There's one which is just our social media that we use for our units day to day, whether you have a unit Twitter account or a parent Facebook group or an open unit page, and just showing off what we do every week. And then there is using social media to actively recruit, whether that's sharing recruitment campaign materials or putting out a plea for volunteers to save this rainbow unit, whatever that looks like. So they're the kind of two strands that I'm going to talk about today. And the first front of just using social media generally, I want to talk about the power of that and how, even though we might not think that that is doing anything to grow guiding, actually that is one of the simplest and most effective things that we can do. If we go right back to why we do what we do and the impact that we have on young members and the opportunities that they have through Girl Guiding and how much that means to them, actually the best thing that we can do is talk about that every week. Whatever activity that looks like, whether that is an exciting trip or residential, or you've taken your brownies canoeing one night, or if it's just, that activity you've done for thinking day and they've made something lovely, or they've done some cooking or some DIY, whatever that looks like, actually one of the best things you can do is shout out about that every week. Not only are the parents seeing that, if that's a unit Facebook group or page or whatever, and seeing the value that their daughter has, their girl has in getting in attending the unit meetings, but actually you are going to start to see more people noticing your content, and just in my local area, for example, I know units have got these pages, and then every so often they share into your local community Facebook group, just being like, oh, look what X Brownies got up to this week. And that's a really, really lovely way of not necessarily actively recruiting. There's no ask for volunteers in that, but you're just subtly reminding people that Girl Guiding exists, that we're here, because we all know we still get those questions. Does that really still exist? But actually just showing off the varied programme that we have and the different opportunities that we offer to girls. So that would probably be one of my best top tips from today, is if you haven't already got a unit Twitter account or a Facebook page, have a look at setting that up. And it really doesn't need to be a lot of effort. Obviously you need to manage photo permissions. That's the most important thing to say. And in the email that goes out after this event, I will link through to all of you kind of how to do it safely information. But really, taking a few pictures during the meeting, which I imagine a lot of people do anyway, especially if they have closed parents groups, and just posting them at the end, literally before you leave the unit meeting, just a super quick, what have we done tonight? And off it goes. If you're the unit leader, that absolutely doesn't have to be your job. That could be a really, really great job for a young leader, for example, or anybody in the unit team can share out that responsibility. But really, the amount of effort that goes into it is so low, and actually the payoff, return on investment in putting that time a little bit into social media is so great. So that would be my basic top tip for using social media in a non-active direct recruitment setting, is just be visible. And you don't need to be an expert photographer, just showing literally like a super basic picture of what they've done, and some smiling faces if you've got those permissions in place. The impact that will have longer term in people's perception of Girl Guiding cannot be understated. And then moving on more to using social media when we're actively trying to recruit. And there are obviously different ways to do this. You can use your personal Facebook accounts, Twitters, Instagrams, whatever you have, and reach out more into your direct circle. And also one of the things that a lot of people utilize is those community Facebook groups. So for me, that would be, Chorley residents, something like that. I'm sure everybody has them. There might be lots of different groups, and that's something to note, is don't just go on the one page that you think is the main one. Actually, there's going to be different audiences on all of them. So if there are 5 or 6 different community groups that serve your area, go with them all. You can literally just replicate the same thing, so it's minimal effort, but you're going to be capturing a few different people each time. And actually the people who are in all of those 5 or 6 groups, that's the best thing you can do, is bombard them with it. And if they see it 5 or 6 times, they're more likely to take action. There is a statistic that somebody needs to see something up to 7 times to notice it. So by replicating that post across all of these different local Facebook groups, that's the best way to get people to notice your message. So then in terms of what to say when you're recruiting in these Facebook groups, I can see Rose is here, and actually a recent growth meeting, Rose shared a really, really lovely case study of something that had a lot of success in her area. And that was somebody, as I said, who'd bombarded as many different local Facebook groups as possible in Southport. And literally in 24 hours, it had about, I think it was 18, if I remember that rightly, volunteers. She's nodding at me. It was a really significant number of volunteer inquiries that had come through. Some for the specific unit that was being recruited for, we desperately need rainbow leaders, can you help us? And also some that were just like, oh, I can't help on this night, I'm not interested in rainbows, but just some more general volunteer inquiries coming through too. So that is happened very, very recently. There is an appetite there for people responding to these pleas on Facebook groups. So I'm not just saying this. Rose says we now have enough to open another unit. So, this is something that is worth putting effort into if you haven't already, especially if you do need units, volunteers to save a unit. I think people respond really well in these community groups to that, this is going to close if we don't have people come forward. And if they've already been seeing for kind of a few months and months, just the general stuff that you're doing in the background, as I've said, that you might share from your Facebook page into this group, they're already aware of what you do, and they're already aware of the impact that has on girls. And as soon as that comes across, it's a bit of an emergency, we need somebody to help or it's going to close, people respond to that message. And again, going back to what Jane said, that call to action being there, message me if you want more information, or here's the link to the website, or, message me if you want to know our where we meet so you can pop along and meet us. Obviously doing everything safely, but just being really clear on what you're asking people. There's no good just like dumping a load of information, as Jane said, and then there being no follow-up. So whatever that looks like for you. So in this example that Rose used, this person basically said, this is who we are, this is what we do some of these activities, we do a bit of this, a bit of that, and this is who we're looking for. And it was a bit of a profile if they needed somebody who could, they basically described the unit helper role and made that really easy to understand. I'm not going to talk down about Girl Guardian's role descriptions, but actually make it more tailored and unique to your unit. The role descriptions that are in place are great, but actually you telling, what that actually means for your local area and your unit is really, really useful to do as well. And in this example that was used, they just basically wanted somebody who was over 14. And then they also went on to say, about the opportunities for training and development. You didn't need any particular skills or expertise, that was all provided. It was quite a long Facebook post, but it had everything you would need to know about it without being ridiculously long, and signposted people to where they could go to find out more, as well as inviting people to comment and message if they were interested. There are lots of different social media assets for you to use to back up these posts. If you don't feel comfortable writing out a whole spiel yourself and trying to sell Girl Guiding, doing that marketing, that sales and marketing, in the growth recruitment toolkits that are available online, which again I link to later on, there are examples of captions that you can use in social media posts for recruitment. So again, if you don't have the time, I appreciate that this is a time commitment sometimes if you're already running a unit and already struggling for volunteers, but there are things there for you to literally just copy and paste and use, as well as images, videos, GIFs. Lisa showed us that brilliant video before. There are so many examples, some section specific, some general, some stills, some videos that you can use in your social media posts, so that again you're not having to worry about what goes out with that. What I would say is put in something, a video, a picture is better than nothing. People notice it more when they're scrolling through Facebook or whatever. So do lift those from Girl Guiding's toolkits. They're really, really useful. And they refresh them very often every time there's a new recruitment campaign. So please do make use of those as well. We have some region assets too, which I can link to as well. We had a Guiding Memories campaign last year as part of our 50th birthday that took all of the different past uniforms alongside current uniforms, and we provided some example posts to use with that. Again, trying to get people who maybe will remember and would have recognised those past uniforms, trying to tap into them as well. So you can be a bit clever about it and tailor your messages and try and tap into specific audiences. But the general presence, the general top tip of just being present, I think is the main one. I'm just reading through the chat and I feel like I'm talking very quickly. I've got a lot to say and I'm trying to rush through it now that we've a little bit over time. So I'll just go to a couple of these questions in the chat. Vicky says, can you let me know what was posted? They post regularly and only get an occasional inquiries. Yeah, so I have the post, the copy for that. I didn't want to share it because I didn't know whether the person would be happy to, but I'll strip out any sort of identifying details and share that afterwards as again part of the follow-up. But as I said, it was a fairly lengthy post. You know, it wasn't just we need volunteers, come and help us. There was quite a lot of information that somebody would need to know about what that ask was, but I will absolutely share exactly what was in that for you all. Lisa says that she's had a lot of success on Facebook using the theme, are you new to the area? Make new friends and support your local community. And apparently that are you new to the area approach has worked really well. So maybe tap into that. You know, people, there's probably key times of year to do that as well. People talk a lot about student volunteering, but actually students, I'm speaking as a student who has just moved back home and started a job, that actually that September time, sort of June to September, as students finish and are likely moving all over the place back home, starting different jobs, have no friends there. That time of year over summer is probably a really great time to tap into that, are you new to the area? And as I said, speaking as a student who has just moved home, I'm obviously already in Girl Guiding, but if I hadn't have been, then I think I would have responded really well to a post that was saying, come and join this community, meet new people, because otherwise you sometimes sit there and you've got nothing to do in an evening. So tapping into that. More comments coming in. Lisa has also been, Lisa's stealing one of my points for later, so I'll skip over that, Lisa. Yeah, thinking that on the same wavelength. Nicola Price has said, whenever Rainbows and Brownies need your help, following a drop in numbers during COVID, it's really pleasing to see that unit numbers have grown, but they now need volunteers. So that is Nicola's example post there. And again, really, really clear call to action at the end. Please don't hesitate to contact the team with an email, and any queries, message me. I think that is the key. Obviously drop the link to join us as well, but that can sometimes leave people with questions, they're not quite sure, whatever. So making sure people know that there is an actual person they can speak to, that you're happy to speak to them and take on any questions is really, really key. So another point on top tips for this specific recruitment part of using social media is be specific. So I've covered that in, you know, using your local community groups, which are obviously just covering a smaller area. But if you're posting on your own Facebook or your own Twitter or your unit Facebook or unit Twitter, which could go out to anybody, being really specific about what needs your help. You know, for me, I said Chorley, but actually I'd narrow it down and be much more specific on the particular village that needs help. A lot of on Twitter especially, people follow hashtags for their local area. So hashtag the area. If there's literally a community page for the area at them, really naming the area. It's easy to do if you're already that local area, saying, you know, this unit specifically needs your help. There's people on this call today who are district, division, county commissioners, and if you're trying to recruit much bigger, you know, whether that's a division page or a county page, then again, it's even more important that you name those areas. There was a really successful post that I think it was, let me find out exactly where it was, it's in front of me. Here we go. So Girl Guiding Wirral had a lot of success last year by using Twitter, their county page, to recruit. And they said, do you live or work here in a specific area? Could you help out at Brownies? We're specifically looking for volunteers in, and listed the places. So, you know, in terms of if you're a higher level of Girl Guiding, and if you're trying to do a bit of a recruitment campaign on social media, finding out, speaking to those volunteers on the ground, where specifically do they need the help? You know, Wirral is a big place, but actually narrowing down the specific towns, villages, and more local areas that needed the help, they found that people responded better to that ask. Again, I think that comes down to people maybe responding better to those like emergency pleas. And if they know that there is a desperate need for volunteers in this particular area, people are more likely to respond to that than a general, we need volunteers. I think it's just natural that people respond more to that ever so slightly urgent request. So Nicola as well is adding that she puts the Join Us link after the message. Yeah, so do include that. Ultimately, they're going to have to go through Join Us, as much as those kind of informal conversations are really, really important and answering their questions. Sometimes as well, people do know that they want to volunteer. They don't need those questions. They don't need to message you, and just it being really easy for them to find that link. So do always include that link as well. Obviously, Rachel was talking about the Welcome Project before and how units are going to be able to create their own volunteer adverts. And this is where this will come in really, really handy as well, because you'll be able to share that specific advert that you've created for a specific volunteer role on your Facebook page, on your community group, etc., etc. And people can respond directly to that vacancy, as it were. Rose has just had a meeting with their local CVS, and they're doing a focus on guiding in January. And they did say that being specific about locations is really important. So yeah, somebody else backing that up. It is super, super important to be specific and include as much information as you can about the location and about the ask and about the task at hand. Okay, Nicola, bringing me nicely onto my next point for social media. We're going to go a little bit more like off-piste in terms of moving away from Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And Nicola says that her county uses LinkedIn, which also brings me nicely onto Lisa's point before about people who are now working from home or working a bit more flexibly. Volunteering is now much more of an option for them. Previously, you know, a rainbow unit that started at 4, half or 5 o'clock would have been completely inaccessible to people who were working in the office. And actually now, people working from home, hybrid working, flexible hours more and more after COVID, that rainbow unit is now an absolutely tangible option. So therefore, using LinkedIn to maybe target those professionals, join in specific remote working groups for your area, and targeting in that could be really, really key, especially if you struggle to recruit for those younger sections. Thinking about who you're targeting, and actually those professionals who work from home and have got the time as soon as they close their laptop down to go out to a rainbow unit. That is a really, really useful ask of them. And as well, a different platform that I hadn't heard of, and I got laughed at because I hadn't heard of it, and that's showing quite how showing my age. But Nextdoor is a neighbourhood app. And I look after volunteer recruitment at work, and I have, in hand on heart, say that I've had more success using Nextdoor for volunteer recruitment than I have for anything else. Again, the fact that it's so localized and specific, and people respond really well to that. So if you've never ever heard of Nextdoor, or you've never thought of using it for recruitment, then maybe that is something to look into. It's, as I said, essentially just like a forum, a little neighborhood group that people from your postcode can join. Samantha's never heard of it. Yeah, so I think it's, you can join browser or app if you just search Nextdoor, and you can create an account and just post, and it will go directly out to other people on that app, on that forum in your neighborhood. And again, the same tips about what you say apply, but actually that's just a different platform. And again, people say they've not heard of it. Julie's on it. So Julie, maybe consider using it for volunteer recruitment if you haven't already. So explore that. There are lots of different platforms as well as the traditional Facebook, Twitter, but LinkedIn definitely for in terms of professionals who are working remotely, and Nextdoor for a different way of targeting that really local group of people is key. So again, I can share the link to Nextdoor in our email that goes out if people haven't heard of that. And I am looking at putting together a little bit of a how-to for Nextdoor, because it is a bit more of an unusual one that people might not have used for recruitment before. But as I said, not in guiding, I've not used it for guiding yet, but for work, for different volunteering opportunities, we've had incredible success, like beyond belief. So it is definitely something to keep an eye on and look out for it using. So we are nearing the end of this social media session. Apologies that it hasn't been quite as nicely put together as everything else. As I said, the plan did have to change quite last minute, and I was hoping to do a little bit more about the new branding. So hopefully that's been useful anyway. I know I've just talked to you for half an hour, but hopefully you found that useful. There's definitely been some really, really interesting comments to kind of come back to. But if anybody has any specific questions that they were hoping to get out of this session of using social media, then please do let me know. We can run over a few minutes and I will quite happily answer any specific questions about using social media.
We did just miss a question in the chat earlier from Elaine about the volunteer awards. If there's still a questionnaire that needs to be filled in for them.
Where is this?
If you scroll up a little bit further in the chat.
From who, sorry? Elaine?
Elaine.
Oh, the one on your 3-year badge. No, so yeah, good question, Elaine. If we just jump back to that, because that is a really good point to make. Previously, the awards were just for people who filled out a questionnaire about their experiences of volunteering, which I believe was tied to the funding that we originally had for the badges. Now these are just for anybody. We felt it was really important that, you know, anybody who has done that service deserves a badge. So yeah, there's no action that needs to happen. They are automatically the report is pulled by region and distributed out. No problem. So are there any more questions about using social media, or shall we have another quick 5-minute screen break before we move on to our last session? I'm also very, very open to people emailing me, and if they want more specifics, and once the new branding is introduced and there is a bit more guidance about how we use that, you know, in social media and posts, then that's something that we'll definitely be helping to facilitate at Region as soon as we're able to do that. No? Okay, well, thank you for listening to me for half an hour. Unfortunately, you're going to have another half an hour of me waffling on at you just shortly. So if everyone takes sort of a 5-minute break and comes back here for just after 5 past, nearing to 10 to